Hi, I'm Peter Jones. I'm doing recollections about my late father, Jack Jones. He was the head of the engineering department for what is now the Toronto Port Authority. In those days, it was the Toronto Harbour Commission. He was involved in the design and building of what is now Thompson Park. At that time, it was just called the Outer Headland, and was built in the 1970s. It was made from dredge. They had a big suction dredge, was dredging the interior part between Cherry Beach and Thompson Park that all had to be dredged to seaway depth of 30 feet. Because the plan at one point was to move some of the original Toronto Port terminal stuff out onto Thompson Park and then free up the inner Toronto Harbour for other uses. When I was 10 or 11, I was taken out on a workboat to see the suction dredge called the Canadian. It was digging the channel into the Eastern Gap and then dumping the fill through a pipe out to build Thompson Park. That machine had a 10,000 horsepower electric motor that drove basically a giant water pump. And the pipe that was coming out of it was 3 feet in diameter, and it was digging 30 feet deep. And the electrical cord that ran it was plugged into the Hearn generating station at the bottom of Leslie Street, the one with the big tall smokestack, which was in use at that time. And it had a 6-inch diameter, basically extension cord that was plugged into the high voltage output from the Hearn generating station running. They dragged it along the bottom of the lake bed out to where this dredge was working out in the harbor. And I think it did something like 100,000 tons an hour or something of basically mud and fill. At the time, it was one of the largest suction dredges in the world. I had a tour through this thing because, as I say, I sort of grew up in ship engine rooms and tugboats. The other project he was involved in was designing the landfill part of Ontario Place. The ships that are actually part of the Breakwater that protects the marina, and there's a small wheelhouse on the end of it that's made out of poured concrete. Those ships were sunk there, and they are full of beach sand. And the 3 ships still have their original reciprocating steam engines in them. And so if you took all the sand out, because they're all covered in sand, it won't rust. So you could actually put steam in them and the engines would still function. I don't remember the ages, probably from like the 1920s maybe. It's sort of similar to the Ridge Town that's off of Port Credit.
Before we could start on the foundations of the pods, we had to secure a calm water basin that would not be attacked by the wild waves of Lake Ontario. This had to be done fast. The idea was developed to take 3 old lakers and create a breakwater. We boarded a ship and were taken to the future Ontario Place. We had a lot to drink and were in an excellent mood to watch the ships gurgling down. At least that's what we thought we would see. But we'd forgotten about the engineers and their careful calculations. They had created the sandbanks on which the ships would settle at just the right height and had loaded the ships with the right amount of sand so they were floating just inches above the sandbank. When the water was let in, they settled only a few inches, and that was it. We were sitting there waiting for the performance and asking when the Titanic would sink. We were told that the deed was already done.
He won an award for doing that. He had multiple things he was involved in. He was president of the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, the Credit Valley Conservation Authority. He was involved in saving the HMCS Haida from being scrapped in the 1960s. When the Defense Department disabled it as a functioning warship, it was going to be scrapped. And he was part of the committee that raised the funds to buy the ship and save it and turn it into a museum. It sat at the bottom of Pier 6 in Toronto in the 1960s, and I was on the tug that moved it over to Ontario Place. It sat at Ontario Place for many years, and then it was eventually moved to Hamilton. It's still there. He also had its own company called Shoreline Engineering, which worked on designing many of the marinas around the Great Lakes and the dock at Bowmanville for the St. Mary's cement plant, as well as a lot of other projects. And he was also involved in port authorities around the world as well.